The crackling of the fireplace spread a subdued warmth through the living room, its glow flickering as I sat in the armchair, lost in the flames. Normally, the fire would have been calming, but tonight it felt more ominous, as if it had a darker purpose. I leaned back, sipping whiskey from a glass that had sat forgotten on the shelf for too long. The burn of the alcohol as it slid down my throat was nothing compared to the searing betrayal coursing through me. Emily had always been the love of my life, or so I thought. We'd been married for years, and during that time, I built a life with her. She was charming, ambitious, and always the center of attention wherever she went. I was proud to call her my wife. That pride crumbled 3 days ago when I found a series of messages on her laptop, left open in her rush to pack for a business trip. The texts weren't about work, not unless secret rendezvous with a man named Greg counted as business. My heart sank as I read through their plans, hotel bookings, and worse, her casual dismissal of me as a boring safety net. It was as if the ground had been yanked out from under me. I wanted to confront her immediately, but something held me back. Maybe it was shock, or maybe I realized that confronting her impulsively would only bring more lies. So, I waited, letting the storm of emotions brew inside me until I could channel them into something decisive. Emily returned tonight, suitcase in hand, a glowing smile on her face as if nothing had happened. "Hey babe, I missed you," she called, kicking off her heels at the door. Her tone was sweet, almost too convincing, but I wasn't fooled. "Hey," I replied, watching her from the armchair, another sip of whiskey in my hand. "Did you have a good trip?" I kept my voice neutral, careful not to let any suspicion slip. She hesitated for a moment before responding. "Yeah, it was productive, exhausting though." She made her way to the kitchen, expecting me to follow as I always did to help with her bags, but tonight, I stayed put. When she noticed I hadn't moved, she glanced back. "You okay?" she asked. "Perfectly fine," I replied, my calmness unsettling her, though she brushed it off and busied herself unpacking. I waited, listening to her go on about her meetings and hectic schedule, each word a dagger in my chest as her lies flowed effortlessly. Finally, she asked, "What's burning in the fireplace?" "It smells different." I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "Why don't you take a look?" Her brow furrowed as she crossed the room. The moment she saw it, her face drained of color. "What the hell is this?" she whispered, voice trembling. The flames consumed our wedding album, the photos curling and blackening, followed by our love letters, anniversary cards, and even the dried flowers from our wedding day, each one feeding the fire's hunger. "It seemed fitting," I said, my voice cold and steady. "These things don't mean much anymore, do they?" Her eyes widened in panic and anger. "What are you doing? Have you lost your mind?" I stood, setting my glass down with deliberate precision. "No, Emily. For the first time in days, I'm thinking very clearly." She stepped back, the firelight casting eerie shadows across her face. "I don't understand." I pulled my phone from my pocket and opened the photos I'd taken of her laptop screen, holding it up for her to see. Her face went pale as she recognized them immediately. "Care to explain who Greg is?" I asked. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. It's not what it looks like," she stammered. "Really?" I raised an eyebrow. "Because it looks like you've been sleeping with him behind my back for God knows how long." "It was a mistake," she blurted. "I was lonely, and you've been so distant lately." I laughed bitterly, a sound that felt foreign even to me. "Distant? I've been working my ass off to build a life for us, to give you everything you wanted. But I guess that wasn't enough, was it?" Her eyes filled with tears, but I felt nothing. No sympathy. "Please, we can fix this." "It didn't mean anything." "It didn't mean anything?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You planned an entire trip around him. You called me boring. You lied to my face every day. Don't insult my intelligence by saying it didn't mean anything." She broke down, sobbing into her hands, but I didn't flinch. "I thought about confronting you when I first found out," I said, pacing the room, "but then I realized you don't deserve that courtesy. You deserve to feel what it's like to have your world ripped apart." Her head snapped up. "What are you talking about?" I walked over to the mantel, picked up an envelope, and spoke calmly. "I spoke to a lawyer. Divorce papers are drafted. You'll find copies of the evidence attached. I've also contacted Greg's wife. She was very interested in knowing what her husband's been up to." Her face twisted in horror. "You didn't?" "Oh, I did," I said. "She's probably confronting him right about now." I tossed the envelope onto the coffee table. "Take a good look. It's more than fair. I'm not interested in revenge beyond this. I just want you out of my life." She sank to the floor, clutching the envelope like a lifeline. Please don't do this. I love you. You don't love me, I said, my voice cold. You love the comfort I provide, the stability. But you threw away the one thing I needed from you. Loyalty. She continued to plead, but I'd heard enough. I grabbed my coat and keys. You have until the end of the week to move out, I said, heading for the door. If you're not gone by then, I'll have the locks changed. Where are you going? She cried. I paused, hand on the doorknob. Anywhere but here. With that, I stepped out into the cool night air, feeling the weight of betrayal begin to lift with every step I took away from her. In the weeks that followed, I filed for divorce and started rebuilding my life. The sympathy from friends and family was overwhelming, but I didn't let it consume me. Instead, I focused on rediscovering the hobbies and passions I had set aside during my marriage. As for Emily, she moved out quietly, her pleas for reconciliation fading as she realized I wasn't coming back. Greg's wife left him, and last I heard, he was struggling to pick up the pieces of his own shattered life. The fireplace has remained unused since that night. I keep it as a reminder, not of the pain, but of the strength it took to walk away. Betrayal may have burned my past to ashes, but from those ashes, I've begun to rise anew.